Mauricio Pochettino releases his first men's national team roster as head coach. The Champions League delivers a seriously wild Wednesday, and the MLS picture for the playoffs really takes shape after a midweek spell themselves. This and much more on Friday morning's Morning Kickaround. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us here. This is the Morning Kickaround, the world's favorite game being covered from the world's favorite country. My name's Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. How you feeling, birthday boy?
I'm starting to. Well, thank you for that. Yes, I'm a year older now. Should we be saying everyone's favorite? It's my favorite country. I love my country, but I'm not sure if everybody's on board with that sentiment. Robert, we may need to rethink our tagline.
Well,
I don't know.
I think it works on two levels because you can ultimately believe that it is everyone's favorite country and just believe that way, or you can just laugh at it because it's also a very bold thing to say at the top
It
of a
is a
show.
bold thing. We're bold people. Yeah, we're bold. Like I'm wearing a Master Shake jersey on today's show. That's how bold I am. I'll tell the story about this jersey one day on Morning Kicker. How does Jason Davis own a shirt that says Master Shake Football Club? That's a good question. Olive in York. Shout out to Olive in York. Go ahead. Go ahead, Robert. What are we going to do today? What we got? Let's go.
All right, we got some great stuff. And before we hop right in, you can reach out to us at the show Kickaround on the social media X and Instagram. And if you want to maybe write us a little note, question, comment, concern, morningkickaround at gmail.com. I mean, it's fall sports mayhem. Every single sport's going crazy. Nationally, domestically, internationally, it's all popping off. So let's hit today's long balls. All right, Friday, October 4th, the long balls. Here we go. Number one, the team sheet is out. Mauricio Pochettino releases his first camp roster. Your first reaction, Jason?
First reaction. What is my first reaction? It's about the same as it's always been, with a couple of exceptions. And I'll put up here the graphic with with the roster so everybody can see it. There's Mauricio Pochettino. Obviously, the two games we're talking about here are Panama and Mexico. Look, I'm looking down that list. The only names that jump out to me are Zach Steffen. Let's put a pin in him and come back. Marlon Fossey. We saw him in the last camp. Good to see him again. I have no issue with it, but it stands out because he's pretty new to the group. I would say Gianluca Busio stands out to me a little bit, Robert. And really, that's it. Josh Sargent, healthy, which is great, which is why we need to see him. So, I mean, do you see anything else here that is of note?
My eyebrow raised on my forehead a few degrees when I saw the name Stefan. I mean, understandably so at the same right. And I think Busio, I think you nailed it. That one was the big surprise. And it's really cool to see someone in the mix. I mean, someone had to be added. And Mauricio Pochettino, obviously, maybe you saw a little something. But I'm actually a little bit curious, like how much he's actually watched it, how much he's taken advice. And then also, I think injuries had something to do with some of the names that are missing. But as far as new names on there, it's interesting to see Busio indeed.
Yeah, I think. I look again. Zach Steffen is here because there's really kind of a mess at goalkeeper, and he's played relatively well. Had a good Leagues Cup run for Colorado. He's playing again. I mean, the thing about the goalkeeper situation is you've got a guy not playing, a guy in Columbus who has not quite leveled up to. He's definitely a national teamer in Patrick Schulte, as much as I like him. A guy who's playing in MLS and was part of this team for a long time, but kind of got pushed out the door, didn't make the World Cup team in Zach Steffen, and a guy who's not playing in Matt Turner. So again, it's like super imperfect. In terms of Busio, Busio probably has been Venezia's best player this season in Serie A. I think he's a good player. What I'm always worried about is how he fits in to whatever the U.S. men's national team head coach wants to do. And I think Obviously, Berhalter had some issue trying to fit him in. Pochettino clearly sees something in him. But then again, there's also injuries. Luca Della Torre misses out, probably because he's not playing very much as Celta Vigo. Tyler Adams obviously is injured still, and Tyler Adams may never be completely healthy. We don't know at this point. There's going to be an opportunity here, I think, here for a couple of guys, but it really is clear that Pochettino hasn't seen some player who we didn't see before, who Berhalter never gave a chance, and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, the real coach is here now. You're up." That didn't really happen, which I don't think is surprising considering what's going on right now.
I'm interested. It's actually slightly surprised to see that Busio already has 13 caps for the men's national team. I do remember when he was getting some call-ups, kind of in right before his move over. I think it was more like in his MLS days, an early transfer time. 13 is a bit more. I thought he got maybe 6 or 7, but I guess that's what a new coach brings, is a second opportunity and another look. So he seems like somebody that would probably be really needing to impress here.
Well, I could tell you every game that Gianluca Busio has played for the U.S. men's national team. Just if you want a sense of this, so he played in the 2021 Gold Cup for the U.S. men's national team, and you'd have to do the math. Was that a meaningful Gold Cup? Not a meaningful Gold Cup? Do that kind of thing. He played against Haiti, Martinique, Canada, Jamaica, Qatar, and Mexico. And remember, the United States won that Gold Cup against Mexico. That was with clearly a second choice U.S. men's national team. I remember that tournament now. He played in qualifiers in the I guess it says third round. So I guess that probably would be what amounts to it wasn't the Hex anymore because they added a team or two teams, whatever it was called, the Ocho. It was Costa Rica, Jamaica, Panama. He appeared in 3 games, 2 wins and a draw. Then he played in the Gold Cup in 2023. Of course, that's the one the United States got bounced in the semifinals by Panama. So he played against Panama, St. Kitts and Nevis, Trinidad and Tobago, Canada, and Panama. He played all those games. That's his entire national team resume. So he hasn't been in too many big matches. The Mexico game, the final in 2021, I guess you could argue that was a pretty big match because the United States won that game. And on the other side, remember, Mexico was transitioning shortly thereafter. Man, I'm looking at this team for Mexico. Jonathan Dos Santos started that game. Hector Herrera obviously was still pretty big. Orbelin Pineda, Jesus Corona, that's Tecatito Corona, Funes Mori, Luis Rodriguez, Nestor Araujo. These are at the time some of Mexico's better players. The United States started Bello, Cannon, Miles Robinson, Acosta, Sands, Leggett, Eric Williamson played in that game. He's not much of a U.S. international by most people's estimate. Matthew Hoppe started at forward for the United States in that game. I think Busio came on as a substitute for Williamson in the 87th minute. So there you go. He wasn't even in the starting lineup. He was a substitute for a guy we don't even think is an established national team player. So
is Matthew Hoppe a memory hole?
Oh man, Matthew Hoppe. Where is he? Where is Matthew Hoppe right now? Does anybody have a missing poster that we can put? I think he's playing. I think he went back to England. No. Did somebody quickly look up where Matt? It doesn't matter. I'm
Middlesbrough. He's on the Middlesbrough,
but he's not playing for Middlesbrough. Aiden Morris is playing for Middlesbrough. Matthew Hoppe is not playing for Middlesbrough. He's one of those players they would prefer to get off the books. They haven't been able to do it. They sent him to San Jose. It didn't work out. He went back to Middlesbrough.
He had like a really good 6 weeks there, didn't he?
He did. 22 years old, Gianluca Busio. So if it's going to happen, it's happening now. And maybe it is happening now, right? I always think that his deficits have been his energy levels or the ability to cover ground has not been at the same level as some of the other players the U.S. uses in that position. But he is a better passer than almost everybody in that position for the U.S. men's national team. He's
more finesse than motor, for sure. More finesse
than motor. Absolutely. It's like, what do you want out of your midfield? Do you want a player, if you're in possession, do you want a player who can be the metronome, who can be the distributor? We haven't had a player who is comfortable distributing from those deeper lying positions maybe since Michael Bradley. Am I missing anybody? I mean, so if Busio can be that guy, great. But again, you have to figure out how to cover for his deficits. So, and that's about it, right? Going back to the graphic here with the roster. That's about it. I'm glad Aiden Morris is there. I'm excited for his continued growth. But he's about the same age as Gianluca Buzio, by the way. I mean, it's kind of some of these guys feel newer and fresher, but they're already, Marlon Fosse's 26 years old.
Yeah, he's hot in the
He's
scene at
he's
Standard Liège.
yeah, he's not a young buck coming into this team pushing for a spot at right back. He is a veteran player at this point who finally found his level in Belgium and has performed well and looked good against New Zealand and has obviously given something that Joe Scally can't. Joe Scally's a good defender. Is Joe Scally a good attacking fullback? No. So if Marlon Fossey can bridge the gap between Scally and Dest with Dest out, then I'm happy he's in there. And we shall see. I mean, the measure of Pochettino is going to be the results. If we're gonna hold Greg Berhalter to account for the results that he got, certainly in that Copa America, well then Pochettino, who had some things to say in his press conference about getting this team ready, we're going to be judging him by that.
Yeah, we'll come to a little bit of a deeper dive into the press conference and kind of what we want from the camp in a bit. But let's run through the names just real quick on this 25-man roster. Goalkeepers, Horvath, Schulte, Zach Steffen, Matt Turner. Defenders, Fossey, Christopher Lund? I don't know if I've said that out loud yet.
In honor of Chris Christopherson passing away. It is Christopher Lund today.
Christopher Lund, I like that. Mark McKenzie, Tim Ream, Anthony Robinson, Miles Robinson, Joe Scally, and Austin Trusty.
Let me stop you, Robert, very quickly. Again, we kind of breezed by the defenders. We talked about Fossey. I think, okay, it's interesting Tim Ream is still in the team because that clearly to me indicates that Pochettino wants a veteran presence because, Tim Ream is going to age out and it's probably happening, I would guess, very, very soon. I don't think he's going to be a 2026 World Cup player, right? Nobody really has money on that. But I think that he's sort of the TA in the team, right? He's going to be the guy who can kind of be a coach player, maybe help Pochettino. Obviously, he played in the Premier League for a very long time. Pochettino probably believes in his ability to understand the game, so that's going to help. Miles Robinson, Austin Trusty, Mark McKenzie, all of them benefiting from some injuries in the center back pool. No Cameron Carter-Vickers. Maybe he's a fringe player, but he could have pushed one of these guys out. No Chris Richards. He's injured right now. So that's two big figures in that position who are not available. And I think it's on Mark McKenzie and Austin Trusty especially to prove that they belong.
Yeah, Tim Ream, you don't think that he lasts 2 more years? Has something gone wrong if Tim Ream is on the World Cup roster?
I will bet you money right now Tim Ream will not be on the World Cup roster. But yes, I guess something would have had to have gone horribly wrong for Tim Ream to be on the World Cup roster in 2026.
Moving to the midfield, Brendan Aronson gets back into the fold. Gianluca Buzio, we just mentioned. Johnny Cardoso gets the nod. Weston McKennie, we're going to talk about his heroics and exploits for Juventus. That guy, Aiden Morris, aforementioned, doing his thing at Middlesbrough, gets called in. He's had 7 national team appearances previously. Yunus Musa and Malik Tillman into the mix.
Yeah. So in the midfield, there's nothing. We talked about Buzio already. Weston McKennie is a player that has to be here. Gio Reyna is missing because of injury. We all know that. Tyler Adams is missing because of injury. He would probably be in the team if healthy and if playing. How much Pochettino values form is certainly up for debate here because Yunus Musa is not playing a ton at AC Milan right now. Again, but Luca de la Torre does not get a call in because he's not playing at all at Celta Vigo. Malik Tillman's playing a ton, but it hasn't ever really translated to the national team. I'm sure that Pochettino is aware of that. I will also say for Brendan Aronson, our friend Jonathan Tannenwald from the Philadelphia Inquirer asked specifically about Brendan Aronson and his form now and where he plays and things like that. And Pochettino said he can play on the right or the left. He can play as an 8 or a 10. He looks very professional. His standards are very high. He's a player that always gives his best to the team. No one has ever faulted Brendan Aronson's effort level. That is, his motor is his best trait. Excellent work ethic, Pochettino says. Quality also to score and run in behind the defensive line, also to play in half spaces between the lines. I think he can provide different alternatives to the game, but this is what's interesting. He said, I think that he's young. It's true he's playing in too many different positions. Maybe it's now. I mean, now it's time for him to find his best position. To say that is my best position. I'm going to perform here. Listed as a midfielder, Robert. Does that mean that Pochettino sees him as a midfielder and not as a forward player? And it's important to note that Pochettino, in his press conference after the announcement of the roster, said that the United States can play, or his vision is for them to play in a 4-2-3-1 or in a 4-3-3. That there may be different moments to play in either one of those formations. That's not fundamentally, as a formation question, different than how the U.S. played under Berhalter. It's either with a double pivot and a single center forward, or with a single holding midfielder and, again, a single center forward with some wide players. So we'll see where Aronson fits in.
Yeah, if you were to ask me what's Aronson's top quality, well, I would say his motor, but I wouldn't say he has any of the passing or the flair or the finesse. Is there some way to combine Busio and Aronson?
Yeah, right? Wouldn't that be lovely? Yeah. Tyler Adams with some better passing ability. I mean, because Tyler Adams is next level when it comes to the ground he covers and the defensive work he puts in. But what's lacking most of the time is the ability to spring his team forward when that recovery happens. He has to rely on other people to do it. It'd be nice to find that player. Right now, that player doesn't exist, and we'll see what Pochettino can do.
You don't think Aiden Morris could maybe fit that bill?
He can. He's not at that level yet. I mean, he's clearly bedded in very nicely in the championship with Middlesbrough, and he's not going anywhere. He's going to play this season with Middlesbrough, and who knows what happens, whether it's going to be a quick turnaround for him to go somewhere else. But I think that until he's playing at a high level, meaning a top division league in a big country under the bright lights of a massive club or a bigger club than Middlesbrough, there's going to be some question. And that's really kind of the trait of this national team, one of the issues we have. I mean, you look at this roster, and we don't have clubs listed here, but you find the guys who are playing at a high level for big clubs under an intense microscope, and it's like 3 or 4 players. That's it. And the guys who are playing regularly in those situations, it's like 3 or 4 players. And so I don't know. I mean, maybe Aiden Morris is that guy, but to say he's already ready for that is probably a stretch.
Looking at the forwards, Florian Balogun gets the call. Ricardo Pepi, despite his low minutes and touches on the ball this season, he gets the nod. And I'm looking at the U.S. Soccer website, and they show the appearances. And he has 10 goals and 30 appearances. That's not a bad return for Ricardo Pepi. Christian Pulisic, obviously the star of the show. Then Josh Sargent, Timothy Weah, and Haji Wright rounds off the 25-man player roster.
Yeah, so Balogun scored on the weekend for Monaco, did not start in the Champions League midweek. Ricardo Pepi got off the bench for garbage minutes for PSV Eindhoven in the Champions League. And his coach, Peter Bosch, has said it's tough for him. He's behind a great player in Luuk de Jong, the captain of the team. So it's tough for Ricardo Pepi. I think he does have quality, and I think this is a recognition of that regardless of the minutes he's playing in Holland. Christian Pulisic, we don't need to say anything about. He is the most important player on this team. Josh Sargent, I think nobody has scored more goals in the championship in like the last 14 matches than Josh Sargent. He is having a great run at Norwich right now. His coach has been lauding him with a ton of praise because of his work, not just on the ball scoring goals, but his work off of the ball. He is, for me, a prototypical Mauricio Pochettino kind of forward because Pochettino wants to press from the front. He wants to press in the advanced parts of the field, and Sargent is capable of those things. Defensively, he is good. Back to goal, he is better than almost anybody in this team. He is not as dynamic, and it's not the kind of finisher that Balogun is, but I wonder where his place in the pecking order might be. Tim Weah did not dress for Juventus in their wild game we're going to talk about against Leipzig in midweek in the Champions League. So I don't know if he's 100% fit, but he's on this roster. And then Haji Wright feels... I like Haji Wright. I think he's an okay player, but he feels like filler. He feels like, well, we don't really have anybody else right now. Let's throw in Haji Wright. And he's also a guy that that McKennie and Pulisic and a lot of these guys know from their youth national team days, and he seems to be everybody's friend. That can be valuable, right? That camaraderie can be valuable.
So a big part of this camp is obviously going to be meeting the players, meeting the new coach, and starting the new era. But there will be two games: Saturday the 12th versus Panama, and in a very rare men's national team away game late Tuesday night the 15th in Guadalajara.
Yeah, the thing that I also want to mention, and we'll get to more stuff from Mauricio Pochettino, but he did say he has met only one player in person from the U.S. men's national team player pool, and that player is Jedi Robinson. And the reason for that is because he happened to see him in a restaurant in London. That's it. That's the only reason he's talked to Jedi Robinson. And it seems very clear that Pochettino is intent on setting up everybody's on the same level. Everybody's starting from the same place. I'm treating everybody the same. And I think that is an interesting part of this process.
Do you think that's pretty awkward to run into your boss before you've had the official like HR rundown? Like you're not actually supposed to meet each other and like, oh hey, how's it going there, boss?
Right. Yeah. I don't know how Jedi handled that. I would love to have been a fly on the wall, but what's done is done. So now here we go.
Americans in the Champions League. It was a wild Wednesday. We got to talk about the Tuesday stuff, but amongst the wild finishes, I mean, Aston Villa beat Bayern Munich. Real Madrid was upset by Lille.
Yes.
But we'll
Well, so we're going to stretch this a little bit, right? And we can get to the actual U.S. men's national team player who had a say in his team's result in a second. But if we're going to stretch, and they're not representing our country, and that's fine. That's their choice. I mean, I may be a little bit bitter in some cases, but John Duran never had a chance to represent the United States, but he did play in the United States. He did play for the Chicago Fire. They did sell him to Aston Villa. The jokes flying, right? That, oh my gosh, can the Fire get it like a little bit more from Villa? John Duran coming off the bench yet again, scoring a fantastic goal, an instinctual, brilliant finish past Manuel Neuer to help Villa beat Bayern Munich at Villa Park. A magical night in that building. Just, incredible stuff. He has been on fire. I think he's got the best goals per minute number in all of Europe at this point because all he does is come off the bench and score goals. So John Duran, that's our first American connection. Not an American, but did play for the Fire. And yeah, maybe they wish they had him back, but kind of like, no, let him go on and do better things. He's only 20 years old, should be noted. So there is that. The other one is, you mentioned Lille taking down Real Madrid in France. The goal scored by Jonathan David. Now, Jonathan David is, last time I checked, pretty sure, a Canadian international. Is that right, Robert? You're very close to Canada. He plays for Canada, Robert? Canada?
My Michigan senses are homing in that you're correct. He's a Canadian.
He was born in Brooklyn, New York. I'm just saying. Jonathan David, born in Brooklyn, New York. He is also American. Now, for soccer purposes, he is not a U.S. international. I understand that. And again, bitterness, I'm not really sure I feel it. He gets to choose his own path. He moved to Canada at the age of 6. He's always felt Canadian. He played for the Canadian men's national youth teams. He was recruited by Tab Ramos when Tab Ramos was in charge of the U.S. U20s. Tab tried to call him up back in 2018, and Jonathan David said, no, I'm not a boot all that, or whatever Canadians say. He decided to play for Canada. Good for him. Scored the winning goal against Real Madrid today in the Champions League. Surprised he's still at Lille. I know there's more buzz around a potential move for Jonathan David, and he probably will have a new home sooner rather than later. But let's talk about the guy who actually had a big role in a massive Champions League victory today, Robert. Who was that?
Yes, the American man, Weston McKennie, did his thing for Juventus as they come out with a 3-2 win with all odds against them. They were down. They had a red card, and they somehow did it. And Weston McKennie played a big part had a pretty almost a lost skill. The slide tackle from behind, which doesn't catch the player, and it was a pass to a teammate who brought it the length of the field to set up the winning goal. Pretty heroic stuff for the American midfielder.
Yeah, I'm gonna make my case that Weston McKennie. What's his middle name? I need his middle name to make this really punchy. I didn't look it up before I started in on this whatever I'm trying to put together. Oh, he's got two middle names. Thank you very much. Weston James Earl McKennie is not just American. He is a super American. Okay, he checks all of these super American boxes. Okay, not only is he from Texas? Who's more American than Texans? I don't know that that's a thing. He's also a military brat. Now, he wasn't born in Texas, but I know he spent a lot of time there. A military brat, spent some time in Germany. As a military brat myself, right, as somebody whose father also served in the U.S. military, I have to say we are the best Americans, clearly. I mean, there should be no doubt. Absolutely the most modest, but okay. Even, maybe we're not more American than other people, but clearly Weston McKennie represents a bunch of different categories of Americanness. And yeah, the kid continues to astound in the way he always worms his way back in. Now, I think we touched on this, that I argued that maybe Thiago Motta was just doing the club's bidding by not talking up Weston or giving Weston a ton of love because there was a contract negotiation going on, and why would you undercut the club and hurt their leverage going up? If they are saying we got to get McKennie back, but we only can pay this number, Thiago Motta is going to be a good company man in his first year at Juve. They've said he was always in the project. He was always in the maybe that's revisionist history, right? Maybe this is they're trying to wipe out the past and make everybody forget that they actually were trying to push Weston McKennie out the door. I don't know. All I know is the kid can play. All I know is that since he signed his contract, he's done nothing but done nothing but perform brilliantly. And not only did he have the slide tackle that set up the Conceição goal that won it for Juve, he also played a pretty incredible pass that Cup Miners just wasted by hitting the post that probably would have decided the game earlier. He was very, very good. I'm not going to say he was the man of the match for Juve. I think that's probably too far. But he belongs 100%. His effort level is I don't think you can question that. He has done everything asked of him at Juve, and that was a huge, huge win for them in the Champions League.
I bet if you go to the Juventus top brass, they'll just saying they were putting him under more pressure in order for him to come out as a diamond, right?
That's how you do that, right? You just continually put a guy in a difficult position, and you say respond. And look, it used to be. We used to talk about how we didn't have Americans at the highest level of the game in Europe. And then there was a question for a while, well, these guys are spoiled, right? They don't know how to respond to adversity. They don't know how to do this. But clearly that's not the case for some of these players. And McKennie is a particular kind of guy. Like, his personality is such a big part of who he is publicly that people tend to they tend to overlook him. They tend to think of him as a clown more than as a very, very good soccer player. And, clearly those two things can coexist. They're not mutually exclusive. You can be a goofy guy off the field. You can talk about putting ranch on your pizza. You can do all kinds of weird things on social media. You can make jokes all the time, and you can still perform at this level the way that Weston McKennie has.
Third long ball of the day coming over here mentally. Let's get back on the plane. Come stateside Wednesday night. One of the biggest matches of the season, probably the Eastern Conference Final in the MLS. A little preview on Wednesday night, and it did not disappoint. Lionel Messi helps Inter Miami over Columbus in Columbus 3-2.
Robert, I'm sorry. I'm not picking on you, but I literally did. Lionel Messi, and I got the pronunciation of the I wrong in that one, but then you said Miami, which is the right way if you're speaking Spanish. We got some streams crossing here.
Hey, I'm a multicultural guy.
I know you are. Lionel Messi is still Lionel Messi. That's the answer to that question. He's played 16 matches or something. I mean, I'm pulling that number out of thin air, so I haven't double checked it, but something like that. Lionel Messi has only played half of the matches, if less than that, for Inter Miami in 2024, and he is still this guy. And they are they won the Supporters Shield with this victory because of the rest of the roster and because of the roster they put together around Lionel Messi. Because he's missed enough games now that you can't say, well, they won it because of Lionel Messi. I mean, that misses the other things. 17 goals, 10 assists, 15 starts, 17 matches total. Okay, so a little bit more than half of the games played for Inter Miami. Lionel Messi. I mean, again, when he's on the field, he is brilliant, but they don't necessarily need him to win. I think their points per game is actually higher when he doesn't play than when he plays. Camacho getting sent off in the 63rd minute changed the game, tilted it towards Miami. But Miami had already done the work. They were already up 3-2 when that happened. We didn't get any goals after the Camacho red. It just meant that Columbus was going to have a difficult time coming back and equalizing. Miami holds on. Miami wins the Shield. Suarez scores as well. Probably not the best from Patrick Schulte. He's going to want that one back, Robert. But it could be our preview of the final. And I think the game lived up to the billing. It felt electric. The stars were on the field. Cucho Hernandez scored. Diego Rossi had a great goal in the 46th minute. And obviously Lionel Messi continues to put on a show in MLS.
So last year, Lionel Messi.
Thank you. Gracias, Robert. Gracias.
Won the U.S. Open Cup. He won the Leagues Cup. And then now he's won the Supporters Shield. So is Messi going to just win everything that the United States has to offer?
Well, I mean, the playoffs are coming, right? Miami has done everything.
He's on the march to the last one.
He is. He's on the march to the last one. It will be a disappointment if Miami does not lift the MLS Cup trophy this season. It will be a disappointment. I don't think it will take anything away from the legacy of Lionel Messi as a player. I mean, come on. That'd be ridiculous. But it does look like we are watching him just take over. And the only disappointment is that he missed so much time this season, that the injury during Copa America held him out and forced him to miss a bunch of games, because who knows what Miami could have done if Lionel Messi was available for 30 matches. Again, I know their points per game was higher without him than with him, but come on. You want him on the field, and he is going to be the guy, if they win the title, that's likely going to score the most important goals for them or make the most important passes.
I mean, you rattled off the statistics just now, his games and assists in his appearances. That's just an unreal level of productivity. And like you said, if he was available for, 10 more games or something like that, who knows the numbers he would have racked up. But amazing midweek action, both domestically and overseas. But I think that does it for our long balls. Why don't we take a quick respite and come back with our hot topic of the day? It's not just our favorite store at the mall. It is the topic of the day. This is Friday's hot topic. The Mauricio Pochettino era has begun. He's picked his first camp roster. And one of my takeaways, do you think that Pochettino's first roster, a lot of the hard decisions were made easy with the injuries, because he didn't have to pick a Reina that wasn't getting selected by Dortmund, and he didn't have to pick a Tyler or not pick a Tyler Adams that isn't in full form either?
Yes, I suppose you could say that some of those choices. I mean, look, he would prefer to have every U.S. men's national team player of quality healthy and playing games. Of course he would. I think he would have called Gio Reyna if Reyna was healthy. If Reyna was able to come and wasn't risking further injury by traveling across the Atlantic Ocean, he would have called Gio Reyna, because he would want to see Gio Reyna up close. If Tyler Adams was fit, but maybe not playing a lot of games for Bournemouth, he would have called up Tyler Adams, because he knows Tyler Adams is a good player when he's healthy and when he's in good form. And he would have wanted to take a look at Tyler Adams. I think there was never really any belief on my end that we were going to see a significantly different roster from Mauricio Pochettino than what Greg Berhalter had called or what Mikey Veras had called the last time the U.S. men's national team got together. Again, you can say, well, maybe Berhalter missed Marlon Fossey. I still think the jury's out on that. He played one game against New Zealand, right? Let's just hold our horses. I like the kid, the 26-year-old, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. You think you could argue that maybe Busio would have been back in the mix regardless of who was coach, based on his form and based on some other factors. Again, Luca de la Torre's lack of playing time at Celta Vigo. There's clearly, for Pochettino, who talked about, the work they did to scout the player pool, into, his group of guys, his coaching staff scouted the player pool. It seems pretty clear that a lot of those evaluations are pretty similar to what the previous regime thought. The proof in the Pochettino pudding, you like that? Just made that up. Pochettino pudding.
Potch pud.
That feels gross. The proof in that pudding is going to be in how he sets the team up and how they play under his direction. Will that be different? Because if you believe that Berhalter was the problem, then Pochettino should be able to take what is basically the same team and get better results, right? Now you could also argue that Berhalter was bad at player selection, but I think we're talking about mostly around the margins when we talk about at the end. And there were plenty of moments when Berhalter made crazy decisions on player selection for lineups and things like that, and we're like, what the hell are you doing? But there were also lots of times, and I think, there were also lots of times when it was like there wasn't really a clear idea of what could be different. So I don't know. This is for me, is Pochettino a good coach? I think he is. Does he have a grasp on what it takes to do better at the international level with the same group of players that Berhalter had, more or less? That's what we're going to find out.
That will be super interesting to find out. And Pochettino has a track record of improving players that he's had under his tenure, but not at all in the international context. And I kind of want to look at the positions and the roster with the games we have in mind. Maybe let's look at those group sets and see which one of those players or the groups of players we want to see the field in the two matchups throughout this camp. There it is on the screen there. October 12th at home in Austin, Texas versus Panama, and then on the road versus Mexico and Guadalajara. So which players do we want to see feature from this group?
Well, it kind of picks itself. What do you want to see feature? I want to see a good performance. I really don't even care which player's on the field. Like, I'm not Pochettino. He's the coach. He's paid to pick the team. He's going to see them in training ahead of the game against Panama and Austin and ahead of the trip to Guadalajara. I shouldn't, I mean, what? I don't know. There's nothing here. So, in goal, I like Patrick Schulte. Is he ready to be the number one? I don't know. Sure, why not throw him out there? Matt Turner's not playing, but I think Matt Turner's a very good goalkeeper. If he was playing, I would have no question about Matt Turner being the number one. In the back, like Jedi Robinson's the locked-in starter at the left-back position. Play him. Play him. I like Christopher Lund. I like depth. Play Jedi Robinson if he's healthy. On the other side, okay, you could flip a coin for me. Joe Scally, Marlon Fossey. Joe Scally is a fine player. He's a Bundesliga-level player at Gladbach. But he does not give you much going forward. And if Pochettino wants to use his fullbacks to get into the attack, which I expect he does, then Marlon Fossey's a better option. Okay, throw Marlon Fossey out there. At center back, this is imperfect, to say the least. It's an imperfect group of center backs. Mark McKenzie has his issues. Miles Robinson has his issues. Austin Trusty has his issues, especially after that 7-1 against Dortmund in the Champions League.
Touchdown.
Tim Ream is 112 years old. 112 years old, Tim Ream. Do we want Tim Ream to get games at this point, or are we ready to say, well, enough, Tim. Thank you very much for your service. You've been great. Somebody else should play. Okay, but do you even believe that person behind Tim Ream is ready to be the guy? I don't know. It's like one of those things where Tim Ream would probably put in a better performance than most of the players in this pool at center back. But if you're getting ready for a tournament in 2 years that you want to perform in well on home soil, then Tim Ream cannot continue to get minutes when you need to blood some other players. Fine, give me a Miles Robinson, Austin Trusty pairing, Mark McKenzie pair. I don't even know. I don't think there's that much of a difference between those players right now in terms of performance for the national team. And in midfield, McKennie has to start. After that, Robert, you tell me. After that, who? Who for sure? I like Aiden Morris a lot. Play Aiden Morris. All right, fine. Weston McKennie, Aiden Morris. Who's the third player who fits best with them?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, that's one of the things that we want to hear and see from the new coach is of those players, which ones does he want to see and which ones will perform for him? I mean, who knows? Has Busio leveled up to the point where he, fits in there, and can Yunus Musa kind of recover the form that he was in when he first hit the scene and everyone got really excited?
Well, what's the problem with Yunus Musa? He's not playing in Milan. He's not playing enough at Milan for you to be like, oh yeah, we have to play Yunus Musa.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, which one of those guys does he want to see, the new coach? And I'm not saying that that's specifically who I want to see, but it would be interesting to see the newer faces, or returning faces, Aiden Morris. Yeah. But it's really a bit of a crapshoot there without, I locked in, you'd think in the past at least, Tyler Adams. So he's not an option. So is Cardoso the guy? I mean,
I keep coming away there. I keep coming away disappointed in Johnny Cardoso. I keep coming away disappointed in him in the national team picture. I mean, it was true in the last camp. You can keep giving him shots. He's out of this group that called in, he's the only pure six. Leonard Maloney did not get called in. He's an absence from this team that some people thought might be in the group. So if you only have 1-6, does that mean that Johnny Cardoso has to play? Or do you ask Aiden Morris to do a six's job? Or do you say, let's just play Yunus Musa there, and then maybe Aiden Morris alongside him to help him out, and then Weston McKennie plays ahead of them in a 4-2-3-1. I don't know. And then the forward position. Like, we know Pulisic is going to be on the left, or should be on the left, although he plays on the right for Milan, so we'll see what Pochettino has in mind for that. Right? And then you tell me, is there a clear number one between Balogun, Pepe, and Sargent? Because I don't think there is.
No. I mean, that's the was it like the Wheel of Fortune wheel? Is like who do you spin? Where does it land? I mean, they all have the potential to be really great and finish on their day.
You know what I would love?
We've also seen and them not perform and not score.
You know what I would love? I would love for this to be like a game of FIFA or whatever it's called now. Like, I would love for this to be like, let's play the game. Oh, we don't like the result. Hit reset real quick. Rage quit. We'll do it all over again. And let's do that with Panama and with Mexico. Can we get like multiple tries at this? Because that's the only way I'm going to come away satisfied. But you only have 180 minutes. You don't have retry. Oh, Balogun didn't work. Start Sargent. Sargent didn't work. Start Pepe. Pulisic on the right. Weah is not healthy enough. Brendan Aronson's in there somehow. Again, I don't know. This is the thing. We are starting from a very unclear position. I think there's reason for hope, and Pochettino is a major part of that. And I still think the player pool is good enough to do some things, but there is clearly work to be done.
Yeah, for definitely. I can't lie. When you read the names of the back line, the defenders list, it does ring a little bit of alarm in the back of the head. It is a little nervy, but to the coach himself, obviously the Pochettino era has begun. He held court and talked about what he wants to see from these players and what he wants to do with the team. He said that he doesn't want to overload the players too much, doesn't want to overcomplicate things.
I'm giving 2 thumbs up to that, Robert. 2 thumbs up. Don't overcomplicate it, Mr. Pochettino, Senor Pochettino. Gracias for that. I don't think we need to do that. I think Berhalter did that way too much. I think Pochettino specifically said they're not going to do 2 and 3 hour tactics sessions watching video. That's not going to happen.
Do you think that Pochettino goes to leadership conferences?
No, but I do think he has lemons just sitting around for reasons that only he understands. I think that's a thing.
He mentioned that they want to play between 2 systems, a 4-2-3-1 and a 4-3-3, which, I mean, isn't the biggest variation, but he
No,
seemed a little bit
no.
more like determined, as if that was a simple choice rather than it being part of like a Megatron sort of a game plan.
Well, I
Which,
think you look at the personnel, and I suppose you could argue that there's a reason to try to get two strikers on the field. I suppose you could say, oh, it'd be nice to have Balogun and Sargent. Balogun playing off of Sargent in a traditional 4-4-2 would be fun to watch. But that means you're down a man in the midfield, right? You have to get Pulisic on the field, so he's now playing in a wide midfield position. Are you asking Timothy Weah to be on the other side? Again, if healthy for this camp, Timothy Weah to be on the other side. Okay, and then are you playing a box-to-box and then a holding midfielder, or are you playing two holding mids? How does McKennie work with whoever else? I mean, you remember the days of Jermaine Jones and Michael Bradley in the midfield? You remember the days that we were talking about Bob Bradley's empty bucket? Like, I don't think that that's the modern way of playing that Pochettino wants to use, in part because he wants the U.S. to be on the front foot, right? This is, again, a lot of this is similar in the way that Berhalter wanted to think about putting the team out there. Again, some of the details, some of the patterns, some of those things are clearly going to be different under Pochettino than they were under Berhalter. But the idea of, he mentioned this in the press conference, he wants to press and win the ball high up the field. That's standard now. That's just normal stuff. Every manager talks about that now, Robert. And if he it can be his philosophy. It clearly is who Pochettino is as a manager. But he is also thinking that this player pool can do that. So if we're talking about executing a plan, what we're hoping is that the architect of that plan knows better what he's doing than the last guy.
that sure is a hope, and at least just simplicity's sake. I mean, from all levels, it seemed like Berhalter complicated things. Pochettino used probably less buzzwords in his
Budwords and buzzwords. Yes, and butt words too. None of those.
Hopefully,
Sorry.
none of none of those. But he did say they wanted to be the protagonists of the game, which is mildly buzzy.
That is standard South American manager talk. Every manager from South America, but it's a translation, right? It's a direct translation of a word you would use in Spanish. And obviously we use protagonist in English. We don't usually use it in a sports context, right? But I've heard Oscar Pareja use this word regularly. I think Tata Martino is noted for saying protagonist. The idea is we are in control. We are the ones who dictate the way this game plays out. We are the hero, essentially, of the game in that way. And yeah, it'd be nice to be the protagonist. In every game we play, it'd be nice to be the protagonist. The United States always comes up against that level where it's difficult to be the protagonist. And I'll also say that one of the things that certainly dogged Berhalter was that when they were clearly the protagonist, when they clearly had the ability to dictate terms in a match, they often ran up against a parked bus, a bunkered-in team that made it difficult for them, and they could not find ways to score goals. And that is going to be, just like it was for Berhalter, Pochettino's biggest challenge. Finding a way to score goals when you're up against particularly CONCACAF opponents who are putting 9 and 10 men behind the ball.
My last little thought or question to you on this topic, Jason, what are your expectations for this camp?
2 wins. That's it. I don't care about anything else. Just win some games. Get the mojo back. Let's get some energy behind. Let's go, boys. Let's just, win. Beat Panama 2-0 in Austin. That'd be nice. Keep it clean sheet. Score a couple goals. Some chances. Beat Mexico. I don't care how you beat Mexico. I know this is not a good Mexico team. The worst Mexico team ever. They stink. Just beat Mexico, particularly in Guadalajara, because that's not something we usually have to do, is go down there. The only times we do is during qualifying. There's clearly no qualifying going into 2026. So here's your shot. Go win in Mexico. It's not the Azteca, but it's still an opportunity.
That sounds like an awesome opportunity. A win and 3 points in Guadalajara. A vacation and 3 points. That sounds pretty good for United States men's national team fans if they choose to follow. There's not many road trips in the calendar for national team fans. Take a quick break. I think take a breather, stretch it out, because we're going to come back in just 1 second for the big question, and it relates to the men's national team in a little way. All right, the big question of the day here on Friday. It relates to the U.S. national team as well. Should the national team coach be considering second division players?
Well, specifically, I think the reason that we're talking about this is because a friend of mine, friend of the Best Soccer Show, which you know I do, Nicholas Murray, who works for the USL, has written an article on the USL Championship website that is headlined Four Reasons Mauricio Pochettino Should Call Up Nick Markinich for the USMNT. Now,
Who
if you
is
don't
Nick
know,
Markinich?
that's a great question, Robert. Thank you for asking. I should have given you a nice space to ask that question. If you don't know who Nick Markinich is, Nick Markinich is a Charleston Battery player, and he has set a USL championship record of 27 goals rather in a single season. He is now the all-time record holder in a single season for the USL championship. Now, it's important to point out that lower division soccer is an absolute mess historically in America. So even though he has the USL championship record, I don't think that means he has the second division record, and he's only tied for the club record with a guy who scored 27 goals way back in like 2001 or something. And that guy was playing in a different league, even though it was the same club, the Charleston Battery. I know, confusing. But the bottom line is Nick Markinich is having an incredible year. He is having just a historic season in the second division. And Nicholas Murray says, hey, look, this is a guy in form. He is scoring great numbers of goals. And you don't have a national team player pool right now for the U.S. men who has a lot of those players. Josh Sargent's in great form. He's in the U.S. men's national team picture. But you can't say that Fowler and Balogun or Ricardo Pepi are on great form. Haji Wright's, I think, been in pretty decent form to start the championship season, so there's that. But that nobody can touch Markinich's form, right? Okay. He's obviously playing in the second division. And this is where it gets complicated, right? Because I think it's easy to say, no, Mauricio Pochettino should never consider a second division player. Why on earth would you do that? An American second division player? Championship players in England, sure. An American in the USL championship? Well, that's ridiculous. It's happened before. Like, this has happened before. Jurgen Klinsmann has called up he called up a college player. He called up Jordan Morris before Jordan Morris was a pro. That happened. It was a unique situation, sure. I think the U.S. men's national team was training at Stanford, and Morris was playing there, and Klinsmann got big eyes and said, let's get that guy in. And I think Morris went on to score against Mexico and San Antonio. That's how my brain works. I think that happened. So he called up a college player. That's not even pro. He also called up Miguel Ibarra of Minnesota. What were they? Minnesota United, Minnesota Thunder at the time. I'm trying to remember the name. This is again lower division soccer history in America. Miguel Ibarra was playing for Minnesota in the second division, the NASL, back in the Klinsmann era, and he got a call up. Now Klinsmann's a unique guy, and maybe this is also about him as much as it is about those players. I don't think that Nick Markinich is good enough for the U.S. men's national team, probably, Robert. But it does kind of bring this question to the fore of where USL is relative to MLS. Because we do have MLS players in the U.S. men's national team. And if USL is close to MLS, then Markinich wouldn't be too far off of being good enough for the national team based on his form.
I mean, 27 goals in 30 matches is just an unreal tally. And sure, some of them might be due to the level. He might get a couple easy dingers, but just that free-flowing goal storm, the goal form, I mean, you got to give some opportunity somewhere. How is he going to test that level if he doesn't get the opportunity, right? I mean, I think the underdog story of the forward having the late bloom is championed by the likes of Jamie Vardy. I mean, he was, at least nearing his mid-20s before he really, got a big break, and he was scoring, crazy amounts of goals for, Stockports and even lower league teams like that at a similar age, 27 and 30. That's truly unreal. Looking at Nicholas Murray's article, ride the man in form is his first pillar. You said, I mean, you can't argue with the 27-30. And then second, division pedigree. I mean, late bloomers, and then his all-around game. So,
Well, so he's bringing Josh Sargent, Haji Wright, and Brendan Aronson into the conversation with that second division pedigree, right? Saying these are English championship players who have been called into the U.S. men's national team. And if we talk about coefficients, or maybe not coefficients, but the ratings, because you can't do a UEFA coefficient if you don't play in Europe, and championship clubs don't play in Europe. But if you compare league strength by some metrics, and I'm not the math guy to go put those together, but if you compare league strength by some metrics, the English championship rates higher than a lot of first divisions in Europe. So that's kind of the argument as to why a Sargent, a Wright, and an Aronson belong in the national team, and maybe a Markinich doesn't. Or, you look at a Marlon Fossey playing in Belgium. How do you rate Belgium? I mean, obviously Mauricio Pochettino thinks highly enough of Belgium to at least think that Marlon Fossey can play at this level. And, okay. I mean, this stuff is not always objective. It is about the player, maybe as much as the level they play at, right? Because some people will tell you that player's better than the league they play in. That player's better than the team they play in. So is Markinich an example of that? Or is he just a guy feasting on weaker opposition, and if you put him in a higher level, he would disappear?
This speaks to the American soccer is weird category, because around the world you can kind of gauge to a degree, where certain leagues level off at what is a certain form or a level of player in different leagues at different countries. But when it comes to American soccer, there, at least in the MLS, I mean, there's players and salaries up here, players and salaries down here. It's not like you can't necessarily identify that level smack dab on a dartboard the same way you could. The top of the championship is a certain level. The bottom of a championship is a certain level. And it's really hard to pin down what the American level really is, more than other countries, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
But we don't have the ecosystem or the functions for someone who is a late bloomer to flourish and be free and move on up the ladder.
Yeah, I think one of the things that works in the favor of the players in the English Championship is that obviously promotion relegation exists in England, and you see players go up, and then you get the sense, okay, can they compete? And quite often, Premier League clubs are going into the Championship and plucking players out to bring into their squads. I mean, they're not taking whole Championship teams and bringing them up. Some have tried. It usually doesn't work very well.
And even when teams get relegated, they pick those players that look like they're Premier League players and pluck them as they parachute out.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And we don't, as you said, the ecosystem doesn't exist here. We don't have this back and forth between divisions. MLS is very clearly siloed from the rest of American soccer in the lower divisions. Players aren't really moving up. It happens occasionally, and I can't think of the last. Christian Ramirez, again, a guy who played for Miguel Ibarra in Minnesota, has had himself a very nice MLS career. Started on Wednesday in the loss for Columbus against Inter Miami, been starting regularly since coming back from Scotland. A good player. Not a national teamer, not that level, but a good player whose career started and really blossomed in the second division of American soccer. Now, you could also get into a question of was the NASL in Christian Ramirez's era better than USL Championship is in 2024? And I don't think I have an answer for that. I can't tell you for sure, right? I don't think there are enough. If there were more moments here, if there were more opportunities to kind of mess around, if you had more windows, if you were talking about, I don't know. If it was the right kind of circumstance, I could see giving Markinich at least an opportunity to see. But maybe it really does require somebody in Major League Soccer or even outside of America. Maybe Markinich can get a opportunity overseas to say, we're going to give that guy a shot. And if he scores a number of goals at what people perceive to be a higher level of soccer, well, then maybe he'd get his shot. By the way, I should mention he's also Filipino. His family, his Filipino roots. And I believe he's been recruited and may end up playing for Philippines. So this may be moot. He may not even be eligible for the United States very much longer. But I appreciate Nicholas Murray at the USL like bringing this up because it is. He's running on behalf of the league, and this is clearly a little bit of league propaganda. Hey, look at our guy. Pay attention to what's happening in the lower divisions of American soccer, the second division. And Nicholas Murray's job is to do that. But it's still interesting to go out on that limb and just say, hey, why not? Like, even if you don't think Nick Markinich belongs in the U.S. men's national team, bringing the idea up gets us thinking more about why there's not more of a connection between the USL Championship, USL League One, and our top division. And I could go into a long spiel about the business elements of all of that, Robert. But just in terms of the connections soccer-wise, culturally, it's fascinating.
So the answer to the big question, should the national team coach consider a second division player? An American second division player, because clearly overseas he's got some second division players coming in.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to say no.
Is there an expanded roster number for a January camp?
He could be that is definitely the one place where you could say maybe you take a flyer on a Markinich. I mean, if you imagine him to be a Jamie Vardy, or you imagine him to be a Chris Wondolowski, right, who remember was playing reserve matches for Houston before going back to San Jose and becoming the player that he ultimately was in MLS, then January would be the opportunity to give him a look. I have to imagine, though, that if Nick Markinich, who, again, may play for the Philippines and may not be eligible for the U.S. men's national team much longer, if he is going to get his chance, it's going to come after the World Cup cycle for 2026.
Interesting take. Interesting take indeed. And thank you for chatting with me this morning. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in. 6th episode of Morning Kickaround in the books. If you want to reach out, give us a follow or a comment or both. M Kickaround on X and Instagram, and reach out to us via email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. I guess until Monday, everybody, enjoy your soccer, and thanks for joining us here for the Morning Kickaround.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Kickaround out.